To jump into chapter 2, where we are going to look at some of the early civilizations, all right, that now begin to develop. Because remember, all right, humanity has evolved. That's a couple million years, okay? Humanity then begins to live a life of hunting and gathering. It's a couple 100,000 years, all right? And so, humanity discovers agriculture and farming. And so at this point then, now humanity begins to expand. The population begins to grow, less people are dying, there's a surplus of food, and so we begin to develop different specialty. All of this takes a couple thousand years, all right, different specialties, okay? The little villages grow into towns, those towns grow into cities, and those cities develop various complex systems. And so let me just back up here really quick. The four societies that we're going to look at first, okay, obviously today, Mesopotamia, all right. We're also going to look at the Egyptians, we're going to look at ancient India, and we're going to look at ancient China, all right. And so out of all of these, okay, they all have certain things in common, which is why this is where the societies develop first, okay? The first one is water, okay? And I know I have it up there, okay? But why is water important?
Everything needs water.
Everything needs water. Someone used the F word. No, not that one. Farming. Yes, we need water for crops. We need water for animals. Do humans need water? Yes, humans need water. What else can it serve as, if not for consumption? Yes, transportation. All right. We still haven't invented roads or Teslas or the wheel or anything like that. And so, if you want to go from point A to point B relatively easily, you use water. Okay, either by very primitive rafts or just following the rivers. Okay, because there's no GPS, there's no roads out there yet. Okay, and so yes, animals need it, people need it, crops need it. Okay, now obviously in this case, outside of it just raining, okay, rivers. Okay, rivers are where the majority of the water is. So many of the early cities, not all of them, but the majority of them form along rivers. Okay, because you have a key source of water. Now, for those areas that are like maybe just a little bit away from the rivers, what ends up happening is, and especially in Mesopotamia, because you have the Tigris and the Euphrates, they start off in the mountains, up in the mountains. And when the springtime comes, in the winter it snows. When the springtime comes, the snow melts and flows into the river, okay? And so, basically, downstream, down in Iraq, the rivers flood, okay? And it floods the entire area. And of course, we have two rivers, so this area gets really, really, really wet, all right? And when the water recedes, basically all of the nutrients that water provides remains in the soil. So the soil is extremely fertile, okay? Crops grow there really easily. That's why the area is known as the what crescent? Yeah, the Fertile Crescent. That's why it's called that, because the soil is pretty fertile. And so crops grow rather easily in the area, okay? Now, early on, of course, these floods don't typically expand beyond a certain length. And so humanity also learns how to channel the water, all right, from where there's too much of it to where there is not enough. Okay, now, these aren't like complicated canals yet. It's basically just ditches that are being dug, so that we can, move water from one place to another. But humanity does learn how to develop very primitive forms of what we call irrigation, all right? Using the water then to move things around. And of course, all of these areas are pretty temperate climates. They're relatively warm. All right, and certain crops, hell, most of them, but there are certain crops that do grow much better in climates, okay, that are fairly warm. And if you look at, okay, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and I don't know if you can see the writing there, but in China, what do those three areas have in common? What actually are they?
Rivers.
Yes, but the surrounding land? Okay. Not quite, but close. They're desert. Okay. They're very warm. Are deserts warm? Yeah. Okay. No, seriously. You put water in a desert, you actually get a pretty good growing area. Okay. And so yeah, the Sahara Desert. Okay. Puta madre, I can't remember the name of this one. But this is the Gobi Desert, okay? The only one that isn't an actual desert environment is India, okay? But India is like really hot anyways, all right, without being a desert. So yeah, all of this happens in warmer climate areas. I mean, this is why, no offense, my Euro-American friends, why the early cities don't develop like, you know, in Scotland or something like that. That place is cold. All right, so not a whole lot of stuff is growing. Okay, so when does this all happen? All right, between 3,500 and 2,000 BCE. All right, so like I said, it takes a couple thousand years for things to, you know, go from we discover agriculture, we start learning how to do stuff, we start to settle down, all right? And here I kind of got ahead of myself. I just relisted, all right? Tigris and Euphrates, all right? So we get cities in those river valleys. Someone used the word river valley. We get cities there, okay? We get cities in the Nile River Valley, okay, so in Egypt. We get cities along the Indus River, okay, which is also a river valley. And I apologize I didn't put it up there because in China, it actually happens in two separate areas, okay? Along the Yellow River and along the Yangtze River, okay? One of them is in northern China, the other one is in southern China. So, I mean, we count it together, we count it as one, but it actually develops along two separate rivers. And it's not like the Tigris and the Euphrates, where the two rivers are like literally almost next to each other, okay? Now, this, I swear, I just copied and pasted from like chapter 1 presentation, okay? So what happens, once again, couple of thousands of years ago, humans stop their nomadic lifestyle. They stop hunting and gathering. They settle down. They discover that they can tame, domesticate animals. You don't have to go out and hunt them anymore. They're right there. You want some bacon, just kill a pig. All right. And of course, they learn that you can make crops grow on purpose. You can grow them right here, so you don't have to go anywhere. And so you have your ample supply of food. Okay. Eventually, there is a surplus of food. People then begin to develop other crafts, other skills, other things. And so little by little, we begin to see the development of what we would consider then modern society, okay? And so, this is new, okay? The other thing that happens during this time is we see an explosion of technology. Of course, if we're not wandering from place to place anymore, wondering where our next meal is going to be, or being afraid that we're going to get eaten by like a saber-toothed tiger, or starving to death, or any of those things. And of course, there's plenty of food, so we have people that, the bad farmers, that are dedicating themselves to other things, other pursuits. And I know, to us, you're like, really, Santos? Technology? Yes, it is technology, all right? It is during this time that the wheel is invented, Okay, completely revolutionary because yes, I'm a farmer. I have to take my crops somewhere. I mean, I can carry them, I can, whatever, but having something that rolls and we can put something on top and push it there, all right, you can carry a lot more, you can carry it farther, okay? Yeah, all right, so the invention of the wheel happens during this time. Humans discover metals, all right, and we'll get into the different things that you can do with metals, but they remember we've had fire. Homo erectus discovered fire, but Homo sapien figured out how to, actually make it happen without lightning or other natural phenomenon. And by now, humans have realized that, fire is good for more than just heat and cooking. You can use it to do other things. And so, as humans discover metal, they develop, once again, we'll pick on Coach over here, bad farmer. But he discovers that you can melt metals, you can shape them into things. Okay, so we get metalworking. Heck, you can make them into tools, which now makes woodworking and stoneworking, all right, possible. Because, I suppose you can hit a piece of wood with your hands or your head until you shape it into something. Not very effective, and you'll probably, give yourself a concussion in the process. But if you have something sharp that you can cut it with, if you have something sharp that you can carve it with, and it's all thanks to the guy who couldn't grow food but knew how to melt down metals and reshape them. All right, so now we have woodworking. I suppose you can try to cut a piece of stone with your hands or your head or just another rock. But no, now we have, technology, even if it's a simple hammer and chisel and you pound it out, okay? In addition, I should have put it closer, it doesn't necessarily have to be a tool. Jewelry, okay, you can make different jewelries out of different metals. Humans also discover precious stones and for whatever reason decide, ooh, the shiny green one is worth something. Okay, ooh, and this shiny blue one is worth something else. And if we put it on, it makes me look prettier. Okay, and people then begin to do that. Remember, humans are wearing animal skins, and of course, what are some of the byproducts of a pastoral lifestyle? You not only get meat from your animal that you kept, especially if you have sheep and goats. What else do you get from them? Milk, but yeah, clothes. You get the wool. Don't try this at home, kids. Don't just take wool and sew pieces of wool. It's very itchy, all right? And of course, and so people figure out how to spin that wool into fabric. And then using that fabric, you can, make various articles of clothing. So, bad farmer, all right? But he's really good at taking the wool and making it into cloth and then designing hoodies. Well, probably not hoodies, but big long robes and shirts and coverings and whatnot, okay? Now, obviously, how are we going to get the farmers to how is he going to get food as the clothes maker or as the metal worker and whatnot? So little by little, we begin now to develop some kind of simple commerce. During these times, how do you buy and sell things?
Barter.
Trade, barter, yes. Oh, you guys are like wide awake, even though it's only 9 in the morning. 10. Oh, yeah, you should be awake. All right. Sorry, I'm used to teaching like 9 a.m., 8 a.m. classes. But yes, barter, trade. Okay, our metal worker will give our wheat farmer, tools in exchange for wheat. Okay, and of course, the person who developed the wheel and wagons, that's you, Caroline, will give a wagon to our clothes maker. I need fabric, so I'll give you some wheels and a pre-made wagon. It's kind of like IKEA, you put it together at home. For some fabric, so I can make clothing for myself and my family. Now, eventually, we'll get there. That hasn't happened yet. Eventually, humans decide that these little shiny gold rocks are worth something, or these other shiny stones are worth something else. Okay, we get a very basic money system. All right, not yet, but at some point, but that's all part of this. Okay, and yeah, of course, locally you're trading, you know, the wheat farmer trades with the clothes maker, trades with the metal maker, trades with the wagon maker. But then at some point, there are certain things that, where did you hit that? And so they have to figure out that you have to travel pretty far away to find these rare and exotic items. All right? We can just follow the river now, and thanks to our wagon maker and the invention of the wheel, we can push our cart, okay, a lot farther. All right? Now, probably the biggest discovery of this age, all right, is the discovery of copper. All right? People, you know, our metal workers, begin to melt down copper and shape it. All right? How it happened, we're not really sure if it was on purpose or if it was some kind of accident, but at some point, a metal worker asked himself, I've got these two different metals, copper and tin. If I melt them down and mix them together, what am I gonna get? All right, I would imagine it's like the dude that invented Reese's peanut butter cups. If I mix chocolate and peanut butter, all right, what's gonna happen? Well, in this case, it creates a metal that is stronger than either copper or tin and is more useful. That metal is bronze. Okay? And so pretty soon, because bronze is stronger than either copper or tin, all right, it's being used as a farming tool. It's being used by the wagon maker, you know, to shape the stone. It's being used by, you can be our woodcutter, as our woodcutter to cut down trees and to carve them and shape them and make them into things. It's being used for everything. It becomes so prevalent. Guess what we call this time in history? The Bronze Age, yeah. Eventually the technology spreads, and for thousands of years, okay, it isn't until the discovery of iron, which happens several thousand years later, that, you know, humans finally, you know, start to make tools and weapons and all that other stuff out of something else. Okay, so yeah, okay, this change in technology is what makes because now that you can make tools and you can make all of these other things, it's not just, oh yeah, we have plenty of food, we're not starving to death. You can actually create these giant cities and these giant societies. Okay, the other thing that we see, we're going to switch gears here now. We mentioned a little bit, we begin to see that change in gender roles. Because remember, when humans were hunter-gatherers, what was the lady's job? What was the man's job? Hunt. Okay, now we begin to see a fundamental shift in that, so that, and once again, I'm so sorry, ladies, but for thousands and thousands of years, what was the woman's job? Sorry, Abby. Babies, clean, cook, all right? What was the man's job? Hunt, work, making the metal, making the cloth. You're going to be a guy. Making the wagons, all right? You're a guy too. Making the wood, you know, like the stone, whereas the wife stayed home with the children and raised them. And now, granted, there were some skills because, you know, you take milk into butter and, you know, you churn it and all that other. But we do see a fundamental shift in gender roles, number one. Number two, we begin to see a rise in social classes. Somehow, and it's interesting because it was the farmers that made the development of civilization possible because of the surplus of food, but yet farmers somehow end up at the bottom of the social status, because I guess they work outside, they're in the dirt, they're in the sun, whatever, whereas, well, the metal worker, like, he makes these cool, awesome things. Okay, the wagon maker, you know, designer wagons, right? You know, you can do. Oh, and of course the wood carvings are exquisite. So you know, people begin to value different things, and so yes, we begin to see a division of classes. Okay, the other divisions that we see, all right, because now we have cities. All right, and I'm going to turn this on just for a second. If one of you is a much better drawer than I am, then feel free to, don't criticize, take the chalk. But I'm just going to draw a big square city, all right? I just imagine cities being square. I know they're not. All right, so now that we have a city, well, if you're going to grow crops, can you really do that in the city? No. All right, so we begin to see then, and this will be my row of farm, okay? And here's the farmhouse. So the farmers live outside the city. The workers, the metal maker, the wagon maker, the wood carver, the textile clothing maker, all of their shops, all of their stuff is within the city. Now the cities did have walls, okay? And so for this, we're thankful for the stonemasons and the stone cutters who were able to do it because of the invention of the tools and stronger tools, because our metal person, figured out how to make a stronger metal than just copper or tin. So it's all interconnected, all right? They have all of their shops in the city, okay? And so this is another divide. So we not only dividing now people by social class, but we live in the city. All y'all live in the boonies, out in the middle of nowhere. All right, you guys are the rednecks. Well, I don't think we get that yet, but you get the idea. So those types of divisions, have existed since the beginning of humanity. And so, yeah, I mean, there is an interconnection between the two because people in the city need their food. The farmers may be outside the city, but they need the food, okay? The farmers, of course, they need those tools to help with their farming, to be able to, they need the farm implements, the shovels, the hoes, all of that to plow their field. They need their wagons to be able to bring the food into the city. They need clothes to, I guess you could farm naked if you want, but, not the best. So yeah, they need clothing from our textile maker and so on. All right. So even though we do see a division, the two are interconnected. All right. Now, the other thing that we have, please remember, are our pastoral peoples. Now, sometimes these could be the farmers, but usually it's people with large herds. Farmers might have a small amount of animals to keep for their own personal use, but you have the pastoral peoples, and they also live outside the cities. And I'm going to draw just like little stick cows or stick pigs. I don't know. I can't draw heads. All right. So they've got their herds there outside the cities. Remember that these transhuman pastorals, yes, they live outside the city, but then they go out. They go either into the mountains, into the fields, into the valleys. And their herds graze, for a couple weeks, for a couple months, whatever. They grow, they get fat, they get lots of puffy wool, all right? And then they come back, all right? And now they are ready to exchange and we'll say sheeps. They can exchange some with the farmers, okay? I need some of your wheat, guys. So here, how much for your wheat? He says 3 sheeps. Here you go, 3 sheeps. All right, give me some. All right, and of course, maybe the farmer then takes the sheep, milks it, and he can, in addition to selling the wheat, selling whatever they grow, they can also sell milk. What else can we get from milk? Cheeses, sauces, yogurts, all of that stuff, because they learn how to make it typically. Sorry, it's the wife. All right, so they make the stuff, and then they're able to sell it. Now, with the city people, okay, dude, I need tools. I need like another one of those like giant candy cane thing looking things. Oh no, you're the woodworker. Yeah, I'll give you half a sheep for a new cane. And she says, great. Make it 3/4 of the sheep and you got a deal. All right, so yeah, 3/4, but I also need metal because, there's wolves and mountain lions. And so I need a couple spears, sharp. He's like, fine, give me like, 3 sheep and I'll make you all the spears you want. Okay, just bring me the wooden sticks. Well, you got wooden sticks and the metal tips. And so, yeah, okay, so we exchanged the whole thing, all right? Now, don't forget our hordes that are out there in the middle of nowhere, okay? They're basically following all through Central Asia back and forth, and if they ever need something, yes, they will invade this city, this village. It's the poor farmers that are going to get it first, but then eventually they might break into the city, pillage, plunder, rape, burn things down, just take what they want, and there you go. So you know what? I think we need a military. I think we need warriors. You guys can be the warriors. And don't worry, we got our stick maker to make poles. We got our weapons maker. We'll use his metal. And so since you guys are the biggest, the strongest, the buffest, whatever, you're jacked, you guys can like defend the city and defend everything. Okay? So once again, we begin to see more divisions. All right? Now, once again, the map. We're going to look at Egypt. We're going to look at Mesopotamia. We're going to look at India. We're going to look at China. Don't worry, though. We're also going to look at some of the other areas that did not develop traditionally. Okay? So we are going to look at early civilization in Europe, but spoiler alert, there's no major rivers. It's kind of cold. Lots of forests. Okay? So it didn't quite develop the same way as it did here. The Americas, kind of the same thing. All right? Other parts of Africa outside of Egypt, yeah, also developed differently. Okay? And of course, those areas developed much, much later because the first ones, once again, were in these areas of river. All right? So we're going to look at number one, where it happened first. Mesopotamia. Okay? Number one, you need to know where Mesopotamia is. Modern day Iraq. Okay? I will ask you. All right, I'll tell you straight up. Where's Mesopotamia? Iraq. Okay? It's in Iraq today. The word Mesopotamia is a Greek word that means between the rivers, because it was between the Tigris and the Euphrates. All right? Now, the Tigris and the Euphrates, as I mentioned, whenever the spring snow cap melted, it would overwhelm the rivers, and all of that would affect stuff downstream, and so they would flood uncontrollably. Okay, it would destroy stuff. It would, if you've seen floods, if you've been a part of it, yeah, water can do all kinds of damage, just as much damage as good. And so in this case, it would destroy everything. It would flood the area. It would drown people. But once the water recedes, the soil is super fertile. And, you know, all of these things are going to grow. Okay? And so, little by little, the people there learned how to control the rivers with some very, very basic irrigation techniques. You build walls, you build, barriers and whatnot. Now, the thing is that these walls and barriers are just walls of dirt and barriers of dirt, okay, and sand and mud, so that over time, a few months, you constantly have to, rebuild them and keep them up, all right? And so, in order to prevent the total destruction, okay, because even today, people's homes get destroyed by floods, and we're using modern materials and modern building techniques. Imagine back then where they're literally just using mud huts and stuff like that. So in order to minimize those losses, humans learned how to build levees around the river. Now, granted, these aren't concrete levees like we have along, modern rivers, but just basic mounds of dirt. And so you constantly need to be, maintaining and building and rebuilding and whatnot. And then in addition, humans learn how to construct canals to channel water from where there's too much to where there's not enough. And once again, it's not like modern canals that are paved with concrete and all of that stuff. They're just basically ditches that go from point A to point B. So obviously you need to upkeep them and maintain them. All right. And so by doing this, yes, the rivers still flood. Yes, the rivers still cause damage, but the damage is minimal. Okay, or at least it's recoverable, and this allows society to flourish in Mesopotamia. Okay, remember, wheat is the principal crop, all right, that is grown. What do we use wheat for? Bread. Okay, so humans learn how to make bread. You're like, okay, so what, Santos? Yes, I mean, it's one of the basic staples. Good source of carbs, gives you energy. All right, it lasts. You can, supplement that with a good meat and your milk from your sheeps and, your bacon from the pigs and all of that stuff. And, you've got the basics of society. The other main crop was barley. What do we use barley for? Beer. Okay. Yes, beer has been around for thousands of years. Okay. Number one, if you're living in the Stone Age, I mean, come on, you gotta be drinking. You gotta be half drunk to survive it. But also remember, the fermentation process eliminates the bacteria and eliminates the impurities. People didn't understand that if you just drank any water, you could die. All right. So in a lot of cases, the beer was actually safer. All right, because once again, the fermentation process got rid of some of those impurities, okay? The other things that we have in addition, not to the extent that you have wheat and barley, but millet and sesame, which are also different types of grains that you can use, okay? Now, because of the Tigris and the Euphrates, Mesopotamia has super fertile soil. And so the amount of wheat and barley and all of that stuff is just immense. All right. Nobody is starving in Mesopotamia. Okay. Unfortunately, because it is a desert and because it is an area that is frequently plagued by floods, there were no other natural resources there. Okay. So some people are like, so how does it? Well, the Mesopotamians were pretty innovative. They were pretty, savvy. Once, they weren't starving to death, and once they developed their cities, and once there was all kinds of food supplies, they realized that they're going to have to go to other places in order to get some of those other materials. All right? And while, there were some things that they could find in Mesopotamia, they quickly realized that, we're going to have to go out there and find some of these other things. So remember, one of the benefits of developing cities near a river is that the rivers can also serve as a transportation method. So they just followed the rivers upstream. Let's see where this thing goes. Okay? And as they did that, they encountered other people. They encountered other societies. Especially because the Tigris and the Euphrates actually start in the mountains. This is now where they discovered, number one, a lot of cedar trees. Okay? What are we going to get from the cedar trees? Wood, yeah. So now our wood maker, our wood carver, has a supply of raw material to work with. Okay, and so we will trade our wheat for the rights to come up here and chop down your trees and then take them back so that our wood maker can make it into things. Okay, up in those mountains, there's also copper and tin. All right, so we'll trade you our surplus wheat so that our metal maker, our metal worker, our smith, can then use that to shape it into tools, into whatever, into weapons, into all of these other things. And along the way, because our metalsmith is a genius, discovers that you can make a much stronger metal by combining the two. FYI, the Mesopotamians discovered bronze. They kept it a secret for a couple hundred years. Okay, so that if anybody wanted bronze tools, they had to come to them. But like all secrets, it eventually got out and spread to other societies. Okay, but they were the holders of it for a long time. Okay, and of course, different precious stones, different goods that could be used not only for exchange, but also for jewelry and decorations. Okay, and so this map is actually in your textbook. The purple areas are the different societies that we're looking at: Mesopotamia, Egypt, and of course the Indus River Valley. And then the yellow is where basically humanity traveled in order to trade. And it shows the various things. So the early Mesopotamians just basically walked along the rivers, and once they made it into the mountains of the north, realized that we can find trees, we can find rocks, we can find metal, we can find all of these things. We just have to trade with the local inhabitants. And of course, they had plenty of food. And we'll study some of these other societies. These cultures up here, you can't really farm in the mountains all that well. So they were more than happy to trade their metals and their rocks and their precious stones and all of this other stuff for the wheat that the Mesopotamians brought them. Okay, just one thing that sometimes people don't realize, the area that today is Lebanon, it was famous for its cedar trees. Okay, and so that is one of the areas that they traded a lot with. Today, they're not there anymore, and this is what happens when you use the forest for thousands of years just for the wood. And so, it's gone now, but the cedar trees of Lebanon were pretty, famous for thousands of years in ancient history. Okay, now you don't need to memorize these. The only one that I typically ask is Uruk and because they start with U's. But because they are important, we'll talk about their importance later. But some of the early cities in Mesopotamia, in that area that is today Iraq, Eridu, Uruk, okay, and the city of Nippur. All right. Now, and Abu Salabik are actually smaller, but they were important because they were more religious centers than commercial centers. All right. Now, I can spoiler alert here. The city of is important because for those of you that are either Christian or Jewish or Muslim, supposedly that is where Abraham was born and started, and then from he went into modern day Israel. So those of you that have any of those three beliefs, the patriarch, the father of that belief system was Mesopotamian. All right, so it all starts in Mesopotamia. Okay, now obviously most of these cities are now gone, they're in ruins, but we have excavated, we do have the archaeological digs. Don't really recommend going to Iraq to find, if you want to, you can, I suppose. But what have we found? Number one, and we'll talk about their religious beliefs in a minute, complex religion, okay? Complex religious beliefs, complex religious systems, all right? The other thing that we have found, and this comes from some of the writings, we'll talk about writing probably on Monday, that each of these cities had a complex governing structure, all right? Somewhere along the way, okay, as I mentioned before, people developed government, all right? What was the earliest form? Who was in charge? The strongest, yeah, we call them warrior kings, okay? Because they were the strongest, so they could impose their will over everyone else. But as the cities grew, okay, that the might makes right, okay, attitude began to be replaced. And so we begin to see, number one, a hereditary, passing down of the kingship, but also we begin to see, different administrative stuff, because we need someone to be in charge of the military. We need someone to come up with rules on how we divide the water resources. We need someone to enforce the punishments for those rules, and it can't just be the king. All right, especially that now we're no longer basing it on the strongest. Okay, we're now basing it on, well, how do people become kings today? It's hereditary, but who gets it? Like, all right, no, but I mean, who?
The eldest child.
Thank you. The oldest son is the one that gets it. Okay. Just because you're born the oldest son, does that automatically qualify you to rule? No. Okay. Okay. Now I'm the oldest son in my family, so I think I'd be an awesome king. My two younger brothers and my younger sister would probably disagree with you. They're like, no, son, he's an idiot. You can't rule anything. He can barely manage his finances. All right. But yes, and so it's kind of like just because you're the older brother doesn't mean you're the best. Okay. Sorry, older brothers. All right. So yeah. That comes in Europe. That happens in the Middle Ages. Okay, but in these times, you're going to see once religion gets involved. Okay, now villages, towns, cities. For the longest time, those cities are independent, and we call them city-states. Okay, because they are independent of each other. But little by little, okay, the cities, as they grow and as they engage in trade, begin to unite into very, very primitive, what we would call countries, okay? And so while the original city-states were ruled over by the warrior kings, okay, as these areas begin to expand into these basic countries, new systems begin to develop. And of course, now that we're ruling more than just a city, is where we get, oh, well, we need governors, and we need like mayors, and we need people in charge of resources and commerce and all of these other different things, okay? Just so you know, all right, because I'm going to start using this term, Southern Mesopotamia, the purple, unites into what becomes known as Sumer, S-U-M-E-R, not summer, okay? So we will talk about Sumerian culture. The brown area unites into an area called Akkad, all right, A-K-A-A-D, okay? And they're known as Akkadians. And then in the north, the green area, they kind of unite and form into what becomes, A-K-K-A-D. And then the part in the north unites into what becomes known as Assyria. Not Syria, but you put an A-S in front of it, Assyria, okay? Eventually, all these three do come together, but that's Monday's lecture, okay? And so, we'll finish off, okay, with this, okay? Before we get into the whole, early primitive countries, actually, I don't know why I'm calling it a country. They're kingdoms, because they're ruled over by a king, all right? No longer the warrior king, but over a king. So the individual cities, the individual city-state, this is the one that's still being ruled over by the warrior king, okay? All of them were built a certain way, but in the center, there was a temple. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to put a cross there, even though they didn't use crosses. All right, they're not Christian. But there's a temple, okay, in the center of the city. All right, because religion becomes an important part of life. Now, I didn't mention it, but along the way, the thousands of years, too much food, all right, people aren't starving, other trades, other interests develop, okay? Along the way, there's the people, and this is just me being kind of cynical, the people who can't grow food and don't know how to do anything else, can't work with metal, can't make wagons, can't work with wood, all right? We need someone to tell us the will of the gods, and because I can't do anything else, that will be me, all right? I will interpret, because remember, religion starts off as a way to explain nature, okay? All of the things that are happening in the world around us. It's raining. Because the gods are sad and they're crying. In order to make them happy, you need to give money to the temple. Then, or a sacrifice. In this case, we're not doing money yet. So we need some of your sheeps. We need some of your clothes. We need some of your metal. We need some of your food. We need some of your wagons. Okay, a luxurious wagon because I'm a priest. All right, type of thing. And so basically, humans, people, your job is to serve the gods. That's it. Because the gods, pardon my French, are assholes. They get mad for any reason. They're the ones that cause the floods because they are just angry SOBs who just like to make humans suffer. So we've got to keep them happy. We've got to keep them content. It is our purpose to serve them. Okay? And so we begin to see then the city, temple at the center, because the gods should be the most important thing. Okay? So in addition to buying and selling, this is where you come to pray. This is where you come to give your sacrifices. This is where you come to fulfill your religious duties. Okay? And so because you can be our warrior king, because our warrior king obviously is important, and the people that help the warrior king run the city are important, and the person that gives you the will of the gods is important. All right? So we begin to see, I'm going to make the temple just a little smaller. We begin to see houses that are huge and ornate for the king, for the rulers, for the priests. And then, of course, everybody else, well, I mean, you need one bedroom and that's it. Okay? You guys can survive. All right? Everything else, though, is in the city. Now, one of the most important things that the Sumerians specifically, but the Mesopotamians in general, we need water. People need water. Okay? Are you really going to make your king and the spokesperson for the gods and the important rulers, and hell, even like the rich people in the city, the ones that make our metals and make our clothes and make our beautiful wooden statues, are you going to make them walk all the way out to the river? Oh, hell no. So they actually built a canal that goes right through the center of the city. What's in the center again?
The important stuff.
The important stuff, but specifically the most important thing? The temple. Yeah, so that God's spokesperson gets water first. Okay? And of course, yes, the ruler is right there, the whatever, and whatever, they're all right there too. If you're like one of the poor workers that lives at the edge of the city, or even if you're the farmer, you really got to walk a ways in order to get your water. Or, you're gonna have to go all the way out to the Euphrates. Okay? So yeah, we see that division, that distinction between the wealthy and the poor, the ones that they feel are important and the ones that aren't. Okay? Just by that central canal. All right? So, we're going to